You are live.
We are live. Welcome all of those of you out in virtual land to whom that may be there to the March 15th regular meeting of the Maritime Advisory Board of the City of Annapolis. As is my custom, I'll just go around and introduce who's who on the virtual meeting. My name is Terry Lomax. I'm the chair of the Maritime Advisory Board, and I go in order of what's on my screen. So I have Rita Wildy, who's a member of the board. We have Lex Burney, who is, are you chair of the MAIB? No, you're just a member of the MAIB.
No, I'm just a member. I'm also on the Waterfront Sailing Center, a founding board member of that, and part owner of Port Annapolis Marine on
Hi. Well, welcome, and we always look forward to having you and other guests join us. We got Alan Miller from Annapolis School of Seamanship, ASOS. I have to keep remembering that acronym. Beth Bellis, the harbor master, and Duncan Hood, who's a member of the board, Peter Trogdon, member of the board, Debbie Goslin, member of the board, Michael Tomasini, member of the board. We have Scott Allen, member of the board. Madeline is from the City of Annapolis Circuit, City of Annapolis TV channel. Hope Stewart is with the Department of Planning and Zoning. Kimberly Consoli is our recorder, and Ashley Leonard is with the Office of Law. And so with that, we'll just get started with the agenda. Ashley, are you, is there anything you would prefer that I take first so you can exit early, or are you okay?
Proceed.
Ashley, are you there?
Yes. Let's see.
Okay. Is there any thing on the agenda you'd prefer we take early just to accommodate your schedule?
I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to talk about the two legislative pieces, I think that's probably where I have the most information for the night.
All right. The two legislative pieces that we have are actually on the new business, which we'll just jump to right now. The first one, I will sort of take them in reverse order. 0222 is the legislation regarding the mooring permits and the forfeiture. Actually, you had sent out, and I sent to the board, the 3 amendments, and then I think you had incorporated those 3 amendments into 0222 as if I recall correctly, and I've sent that to the board, and I assume those amendments were the same ones that we had talked about a month ago. It looked like they were consistent with it. So I will just go around the board and ask if there's any, but if I'll start with Frida, but I'm going to ask if there's any additional comments or whether we're okay with the 0222 as amended per our discussion the last time. So Frida, any additional comments?
No, thank you. No, I understand it, and I don't have any comments or questions. Thank you.
Actually, I should back up. Beth, is there any other changes that you had or was you fine with the changes as incorporated by Ashley? You're on mute, I think, or at least you're not coming. There you go. For some reason, now you're back on mute. But you're not coming through.
I talked to her. We were actually on Monday at the Environmental Matters Standing Committee, and Beth at that time indicated she was fine with the amendments.
Okay. Alan, did you have a chance to take a look at that? I know you were not on the board when we first reviewed it, but you're now here and these are amendments. So you get to weigh in if you have any comments.
I did read it, no comments, especially after Beth's comments. It seemed to make sense to me.
Duncan?
Good to go. Good to go.
Peter?
I thought the changes were good, so I'm fine.
Debbie?
I'm fine with it also.
Scott?
I'm basically fine with it. The only question I have is a very technical one. If someone has a longer term mooring permit and they change boats, ownership of a boat, or they trade a boat, would the second boat carry on with the permit, or does it go with that particular registered boat?
Actually, if I understand it, the mooring lease is to the individual. So it's individual specific, not boat specific.
I think that's correct, but I think you probably still have to update the paperwork
Right.
to let,
Right. You'd
to
have
let the harbor
identify
know.
the description of the boat and all
Yeah,
of that, but the mooring, Scott, the lease itself is with the individual.
yeah,
Okay.
but just, you would have to update it so that, for purposes of this legislation in particular, that it would become the permitted vehicle or
Because it
vessel
says-
rather.
Yeah, it says vessel a number of times. I just didn't know. If they could
Yeah,
have
we
another
added a
vessel.
new definition that's permitted vessel, so it would be the one on the application. So you would have to, if you switched it out, you would have to update your paperwork.
It doesn't negate the permit though.
I don't
Doesn't
believe so,
disqualify.
no.
Okay, that was my question. So,
Mr. Tomasini.
I'm clear on this one. It seems like a good, reasonable compromise on all the comments that have been made. And I hope it works, Beth.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval of the 0222 as amended.
So
So
moved.
moved.
That was Duncan, second.
Second,
Rita, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's unanimous. So Kimberly, you can make a note of that. And actually, I will send in the legislative referral report, or what do we call it? It's called something else, but anyway, I'll send that in the next day or so we can move forward with that. The other legislation is is R 1722, which was simply a resolution to designate the Annapolis Waterfront and Sailing Center as the Annapolis City Ambassador to the tall sailing ships and historic boats community in furtherance of maritime heritage of Annapolis. So I will, I guess the one question I had, I realize this is just a resolution, but I see that Alderman Arnett is with us, so I will ask him. Ross, we have had a bit of discussion, and in fact, it's on the final versions are on the agenda later tonight, of the process for visiting vessels, not only tall ships, small ships, other vessels, particularly to the Burtis dock. And there's a whole new, I'll call it, policy with respect to how you make arrangements, go through the harbor master's office so that there's this central booking, and there's, coordination and limitations on days. And if you book and don't show up, there's a, you can wind up paying a fee. Does this legislation intend to make any change to that, or simply are all of the vessels, including the vessels for which AWSC is an ambassador, have to go through the harbor master under the normal process for their actual dockage?
All vessels have to go through the harbor master, be they tall ships, short ships, broad ships, motorized sail. That is the decision of the city, and it makes sense to just have one focal point. The Annapolis Waterfront and Sailing has always been the group that the tall ships look to, have been the liaisons. The tall ships are coming for the uprigging, and this is a resolution to simply establish them as that function. And their function is more than tall ships. It has to do with STEM and camps for kids that need to be introduced to the water and those sorts of things. But they didn't have an official status, and this resolution is meant to give them that status, recognize that status, and them as the liaison. They're the group that the tall ship captains know and I think trust and rely on. And so this resolution would keep them in that position and would keep them doing all the other community services that they've done over the years. But in terms of who coordinates the city dock, it is clear that it is the city harbor master that does that. This group will arrange it, will arrange getting the tall ships here and all the other programs that they've done in the past.
So is the AWSC going to be, would you, and maybe I should ask Scott or Lex or somebody else who's on the more active with that group, is the AWSC going to be the applicant for to the harbor with the city on the city application, or are they going to simply coordinate and provide the application to the particular captain or representative of the organization? Because it would seem to me that the way this is written, it's the organization or the boat captain or somebody from the vessel has to formally make the application, although certainly AWSC can facilitate the paperwork. But I think we run into a problem if AWSC is making multiple applications as opposed to the captains making the applications, because if they don't show up, who's going to be liable for the dockage fees?
I have a question. Can I just interject a question really quick, and maybe Lex can, or somebody can answer it both at the same time? What prevents the center from doing all of those things in the absence of the resolution? And I'll go on mute.
I'm assuming that is directed to me, or I can take a crack at it. The old relationship was that the sailing center had a relationship with the state vis-a-vis the long dock. Now that the long dock has been turned over by the state to the city's decision has been that the harbor master will regulate the long dock just as the harbor master regulates all the other mooring facilities, both slips and mooring balls. So that left the question of, well, what is the role of the sailing center? And that's what this resolution is. And I think it's pretty forthright. They are the liaison between the tall ships and the STEM programs and all the other things that they've been doing, which the city also has valued over time. A lot of the other alderpersons that are not on tonight have found it beneficial, particularly the STEM programs. So they need a status, and I'll let Scott and Lex speak to this for themselves, but the center had its own form, which was a shorter form to register boats, particularly when they were using the long dock under the state auspices. And now that's all changing with the change in ownership. And I think there is not general satisfaction, but there is general agreement that we will use the new forms, and there are different forms for different types of ownership, nonprofits, those sorts of things. So I'm getting an echo. So this resolution was actually written a year ago. It was held in abeyance at the request of Senator Alfrith until we actually sorted out the ownership. There was some concern that it was more important to get the transfer of the long dock and the Burtis house to the city than to sort out these particular sets of ground rules. And so it is now coming in now that that transfer has taken place.
Yes, Frida.
So I have a question. Will any of the income from the use of the dock go to the center, or will it go to the city?
Goes to the city, the
Okay.
slip fees.
Okay. So one thing that concerns me about this is that the center spends about 69% of their income on management and fundraising expenses. And so that leaves 31% to go towards their programs. And traditionally, most charities spend 15% of their income on management and administrative costs and 10% on fundraising, with 75% of their income going towards programs. So I'm not understanding why we want to appoint this organization as an ambassador for the city when they are so way out of line with their expenses and fundraising costs. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this. So any light you could shed on this, Ross, would be appreciated.
Well, I'll turn that over to Scott and Lex. But I think that charitable and 501c3 organizations are all over the map in terms of their money that goes to defray costs for administration and other things versus going into programs. But I don't actually have that particular data that you're referring to, so I can't speak to it.
So I can kind of take a little crack at it. And
Yeah, I think the intent of the nonprofit is to provide the introduction and coordination, not of necessarily doing the teaching, but it's volunteers that do teaching or the ships that come in, and also the coordination with the schools. So that's the network that they're providing, not funds to do that. And the county, if it's the county schools, they provide funds to defray costs, whether it's on the ships or docking or whatever it may be. So it's really, if you can almost, I wouldn't call it a marketing, but it's an introduction, arranging type organization that has the network both at sea, so to speak, with the ships, which is very unique because these ships have a fairly closed society, Frida, the Fall Ship Group, as well as having the network with the schools and the functions actually within the city. It's doing a service for the city by getting the various kids out from aspects of their education or lack thereof, and getting them out on the water. So the intent and the mission is to get people who didn't otherwise have exposure to the water, the Chesapeake or ships, down there. It's not run to take you or me out necessarily to go sailing on a full ship. So
no, I've been out, on Buller Bear with some box ring kids in the past. I understand, part of their mission. Scott, how many employees do they have? Are a lot of their funds spent on salaries?
They have the director, Lee Tawney, and then they have contract employees from bookkeeping, accounting, that kind of stuff. They're paid on contract basis.
Hey, Scott.
Duncan?
Where do their operational funds come from at this time?
From donations. The funds that come from the schools go, and I can't say exactly, but pretty much go to the cost of the ships. If there's a cost, on a ship to get it there, whether it be docking or something, transits or fuel, whatever it may be. But that's where the funds come and go. The county doesn't give the 501c3 money for operations. It goes straight to benefit whatever the program may be, whether it's STEM or getting Hispanic kids out or Archie Traders kids.
But I thought the
hookup camps.
resolution said that they don't take any funds whatsoever.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
I thought the resolution said they don't take any funds whatsoever. That's what I read.
You can show me where it says that. Maybe I can clarify.
And I might, can you all hear me, Lex here? Just to go at it from another direction to the question, the sailing center's really been a labor of love, and without something like this, there's just no way to continue at all, because there's no recognition of the sailing center's, reason to exist. And so there's no authority, there's no, other than the fact that it's a bunch of folks who are just trying to help bring attention to the city dock and the heritage of Annapolis. Without something like this, there's simply no way to raise donations. There's no certainty of the future for the 501c3. With the state, we had at least an MOU, so we knew that from one year to the next, notwithstanding COVID, there was going to be an ability to make a commitment to bring, pop-up camps or whatever it was, because we had the ability to, the certainty there, but there is none now. And so without a recognition from the city of the sailing center's raison d'etre, if you will, it won't be able to continue. And, maybe the work that's well listed, if you read through the proclamation, all the whereases, or all the things that have been done, it's a significant contribution, I think, to the waterfront of the city and to the city's maritime heritage. And we'd just like to continue that. If that's not to be, then that's not to be. That's up to the committee and the city council. But this would be one way of recognizing the purpose.
One of the whereases, Frida, is, I don't know what number it is, 10 or 12, talks about it's an all-volunteer organization, does not charge for its programming. So if there's a charge from a ship to take, that's where the county might pay a certain amount that goes to the ship to take it out for a STEM program or whatever it may be. Or the city might do something for underserved kids, but that's not paying a waterfront center unless it goes through to the ship.
Okay.
If I could interject in response to, I think it was Beth made the comment. There is nothing about taking funds or charging or anything, and in fact, it would not be appropriate. A resolution is a sense of the council. If you were going to get into things that had to do with accepting funds or doing anything like that, that would have to be done by ordinance. A resolution, again, is only the sense of the council. It does not go into city code.
Debbie, you had your hand up.
Yes, if I can go back. The MOU that Lex referred to was specifically for use of that dock. This doesn't have anything to do with the dock. So again, I'm just trying to figure out what this does other than say that, the organization does good things, which many organizations in Annapolis do every day. So it's not tied to the use of any dock at City Dock that I can see. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So let me go back to my initial question, because it's the concern that I had, and I will preface my follow-up. When we were going through the City Dock Action Committee, there was a great emphasis on the fact that in anticipation of and I'll call it the Burtis dock, the long dock, becoming available as a city asset, that there would be a variety of opportunities for everything from tall ships, small ships, large, short ships, as well as charter fishing, tours out to or visits out to the what do you call it, Thomas Point, et cetera. There was going to be, the idea was a multi-use facility that would accommodate a variety of interests that have not been able to use City Dock because of the restrictions that are on City Dock. And I just want to make sure that Scott, you, Lex, you, Ross has already indicated his position on this, is that the coordination, the booking of this, the physical booking of City Dock will be done through the harbor master in the regular course of business, that as the way the city has it set up now with formal applications, reservations, et cetera, so that we can ensure that all the constituents that might want access to that particular dock have it. And so, Scott, is that your understanding also, that it'll go through the harbor master, as do all the reservations?
That's my understanding with the reservations, and I think Ross can answer that more clearly on that with the policies that are made by the city council. The waterfront center is more of an introduction, coordination, but not doing the transfer of funds to pay the city dock.
All right.
So let me speak to that directly, Terry, and you'll understand this. You have the charter, you have the code, and then you have rules and regulations. The harbor master has established a set of rules and regulations, and they were recently reviewed by the rules committee. The rules committee does not have purview over rules and regulations other than the right to review them before they're promulgated. Our only option, if we wish some change to a rule or regulation, would be to change the city code to specifically change what can or cannot be done by rule. So that part of this process has already taken place. The rules committee had a hearing. Beth presented, City Assistant Attorney Leonard presented. We heard those rules. We have 30 days to respond to them. I don't have a sense that there's going to be any response to it. The rules seem to make sense, and they will become rules. Then if there's any changes to those rules, it'll go through the same process. There'll be a notice of rulemaking. It'll come before the rules committee for review. But again, the city council does not have by code the right to approve or disapprove of rules and regulations. That is the province of the city staff.
Well, and again, my comments are not directed to the efficacy of the resolution, because I think I've heard that that there's a benefit to having an organization dedicated with city imprimatur to coordinate with these various organizations, tall ships, small ships, et cetera. My only concern is that we don't have the waterfront center out doing bookings without applications coming to the harbor master's office, and then we wind up with a mess of a conflict because somebody's put an application in through Beth, and then two boats show up for the same space on the same day. So, but I think everybody's made it clear that no, the AWSC is sort of the ambassador, the liaison, the middleman, so to speak. But the actual booking of the days and times at City Dock are to be handled strictly through the harbor master's office, just like any other booking. And with that, I'm okay with the resolution. I might suggest that we add that in the legislative report, that be made clear. But with that understanding, I'm okay with the resolution, because I just don't want to see the potential for two different people booking City Dock at the same time.
I mean, unfortunately, we have made that clear, but unfortunately, that has not happened.
Well, I just then that.
I mean, what I would say is, multiple groups have told me that at least one group has told me they have 41 bookings at City Dock, and we have no bookings from that group.
Well, they then need to be turned away until they get an application in accordance with the city rules and application. And so, to the extent that they're coming through AWSC or any other organization, those organizations need to understand that the bookings need to come through just like any other booking. They have to come through the harbor master's office, so we don't get into this problem.
Yeah, I mean, what we would like to see is like the groups that understand this.
So I mean,
So the mayor, the city manager, and by virtue of review by the rules committee, everybody in the city, and I think our good friend Brian Callahan is also getting caught up. There is a singular policy from the city that the management of all slips and moorings in the city are handled through the harbor master. The calling of people to come and participate, for example, the impending uprigging, is something that the sailing center can help as a liaison. If there's a need to make sure the rules are commonly acknowledged, it may be more between the mayor's office and the harbor master. But I think everybody, the policy, and as late as Friday afternoon at 4:30 between the mayor and I, the policy is clear and unambiguous and is how we're going to move forward. That does not mean that there may not be some refinements. For example, one of the applications that the harbor master has developed is for nonprofit ships. Not all ships are nonprofit, and we'll have to worry about how that all gets sorted out. But that again is through the harbor master.
I mean, I wish that you were correct, Alderman Arnett. However, I have heard groups that say that they have 41 bookings through Lee Tawney, and I don't have these bookings. So unfortunately, and I have also heard that groups that fully understand exactly what they've been told verbally and in writing, that they've been asked multiple times to submit their bookings, even though they're already booked with me. So it's not my intent to create drama, but I mean, my Saturday afternoon was impeded by a group that said that they have a booking, and they showed up on our dock with no booking. And so, I mean, that's awkward. But what will be very much more awkward is when there's already a boat there, and then you have a group that's expecting to board the boat and they can't get on because there's another boat there. So this is very embarrassing to me, and it's very awkward, and it's not acceptable. And the city manager and the Office of Law has made their desire clear. But unfortunately, there are many people that are skirting that, and that it's awkward.
Beth,
Hey, Beth, this is Lex. We met a while ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it's been a while. And to me anyways, based on that meeting with Jim Muldoon and you and me and your assistant, it was pretty clear that what you're saying is the way that it's supposed to work. The only wrinkle that I was confused about, and now I think it's been made clear, is whether the sailing center itself would make the reservation or whether the ship's captain, if you will, would make the reservation. And it seems from what I understand, most recently it's the ship's captain. So what we've been talking about is that the sailing center would be the ambassador trying to organize it, but really wouldn't have the authority to actually book a slip, if you will. That would have to come from the ship itself. And so if there's been a misunderstandings, I apologize for that. I wasn't aware of any of that. And who struck John at this point, I don't think really makes any difference. We're trying to put something together here that benefits everybody, the community, the kids, the city, with a strong history behind it. And whatever we can do to move forward together, I think is what we should do. This resolution would help us in that it gives us some credibility. But it seems very clear from this conversation, and I appreciate the conversation, because I think important to be had. And Terry, as you said, maybe it should be stipulated somewhere in, alongside the resolution or however that would happen, so that once and for all, there's absolute clarity about what this process is supposed to be, because it's not been in anybody's interest to have it be confusing. And there can only really be one captain at the ship. And it's pretty clear that that's the harbor master's office. So thank you.
Drop in for a sec.
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah, what we've got going here is sort of an old traditional cobbled together organization that's trying to be tied into the city's operations. The city owns the dock, and that's the bottom line. More importantly, when I read this resolution, all it really is a pat on the back to the Waterfront Center without giving them any inclusion into the city itself. So we've got sort of this tack on thing where we're saying, good for you, go ahead and do it. But there's no support built into this. I'm reminded very much of Sail Baltimore, the organization in Baltimore, who does a very similar thing up in Baltimore. And it seems to me that this is something that needs to go back and be negotiated. And I'm not talking about the fees. I think the fees is a settled and done deal. But I think the relationship of the Waterfront Center to the city is way too loosey-goosey. If we're going to support them, we should support them, as opposed to just saying, oh yeah, you can hang out on the dock and do whatever you want, which is kind of what we're saying in this resolution. So I have a little bit of a problem with that.
Duncan, would you be, and Lex, I thank you for your thoughts on that, because Duncan, would you be comfortable with a recommendation that it be that in the resolution to just being made clear, made clear that that bookings for the physical occupancy of the dock are to be made directly through the harbor master?
Yeah, well, I hear you, Terry, but I think that's a fact. And of course, we can add it in, but it doesn't solve the operational problem of the Waterfront Center to the city's structure. Are they going to be an ambassador for the city? If so, I think they should be somehow under their umbrella. That's my opinion. If the Waterfront Center wants to be an independent organization, like they are, it becomes extremely difficult for them to fundraise. It becomes difficult for them to operate because they have no resources really, and they have no direct support from the city, whether we're talking financially or authority. Is that a word? Authoritarian? You get the idea.
I mean, I might ask for Ashley Leonard to speak if she has a moment.
About.
She's here.
She's here.
Yeah, I'm here. What exactly did you want me to speak on, Beth?
So I think that Duncan is saying, like, if Annapolis Waterfront and Sailing Center has a role, he wants it to be defined.
I think that's right.
And I understand where his thoughts are. So, and I understand where that's coming from. So what would that look like legally?
That's what needs to be worked out here, in my opinion. You know, a resolution saying that they're great is a nice thing to say, but it's only a nice thing to say. It doesn't actually allow them to do anything. You follow what I'm saying?
But Duncan, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, that is an ordinance.
Exactly.
That's not a resolution.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it would either be an ordinance, or if the mayor is doing it, then you would hire them as like an independent contractor or some other legally binding agreement.
Yeah, and I do hear you.
It's like in the government, excuse me.
So for purposes of this resolution, it seems to me that, and I can't remember who said it's maybe it was Peter, but who said, it's a resolution, it's a pat on the back, and that their role is to be sort of the, I'll call it the marketing arm to solicit visits, but then to direct the captains to book their actual dates of visit in accordance with the city rules and regulations, which seems to me makes sense and is what's contemplated by this resolution. And we just need to make clear that that is the role, that they are the marketing arm, I'll call it, for sort of a lack of a better description, but that bookings are to come through the harbor master's office so that there is a centralized calendar, so to speak, and that has to be observed. And if it's not observed and somebody shows up, hard as it may be, they need to be turned away, is my feeling, because if I show up at a marina and I don't have a reservation, it is entire, and the slips are full, I'm not going to get a slip. Even if I show up before the slips get full, if there's other reservations ahead of me, I'm not going to get a slip, and this should be no different. So that's my take on it. Debbie, you have a comment?
A question again, and I think I know the answer, but I just would like to hear it. Is it the idea that this organization will have exclusive access to these other vessels, and that the city will only want STEM programs and other educational programs to be provided by this organization? Because there are other organizations, nonprofit and for-profit, that are doing them currently at City Dock or out of City Dock. So I'm just trying again to understand what this accomplishes.
No, I mean, I don't think so, Debbie. I mean, as we've discussed at length, the harbor master controls access to the long dock, and if there's two people who want the dock at the same time, I guess it's the one that gets there first. So I don't think there's anything in the resolution that suggests that it's the sole proprietor of tall ships and short ships, as Terry's been saying, at all. I don't think we view it that way at all. And then my cousin Duncan, whose mother was my father's sister. By the way, Duncan, what's wrong with a pat on the back every now and then anyhow? There's been a lot of work that's gone in here.
I'm totally into the pat on the back. I'm trying to get you under the tent.
If I can bring up an example, the uprigging in the spring is a derivative of the downrigging in Chestertown in the fall. The mayor is the one who wanted to have that in Annapolis, and he went to the downrigging in Chestertown and came back. Ross, you could speak to this, but he said, let's do this. We want this in Annapolis. So this was a mayor's verbal directive, and Waterfront Center had the access to the ship. So that was the ambassadorship part of it. The other part of putting it together, reservations is one thing. And also another part of this that the city needs to do, Ross, if the mayor wants to have the uprigging, the mayor needs to work within the city operations, management, whatever, and work with Beth, because Waterfront Center may find 8 ships. The mayor wants 8 ships, but if the mayor doesn't earmark space on the city dock, the city doesn't get what the mayor wants. Even if the Waterfront Center found the ships and Beth
the earmarking is the reservation. And let me go back to
and so that needs to get worked out in the city. If the mayor wants 8 ships down there, he needs to tell the harbor master, we need space for 8 ships or something, whatever the mayor wants.
That goes back to the problems we had earlier years ago, where the mayor was just willy-nilly picking and choosing who gets to come into City Dock, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah. So
I understand totally. It's a bigger picture thing. He's not supposed to do it.
The main reason for the captains or whoever is the person, not the liaison, not the marketing director, for the captain to book the City Dock is that, among other things, in the rules and regulations, is if the ship doesn't show up, they're liable for a dockage fee. And I don't think the Annapolis Sailing and Waterfront Center or Waterfront and Sailing Center want to be on the hook as the applicant for that fee if one of these ships doesn't show up. So it is, to me, imperative that not only it's to the benefit of AWSC, but also for the management of the long dock, is that any vessel that's coming in, that captain or that organization directly needs to complete the application and sign off on the application so that they are bound by the application. It's that simple to me anyway. And that's and I don't see anything in this resolution that changes that requirement, but I raised it because I'm concerned that it could be interpreted by AWSC or someone as I can just book whenever I want. And that should not be the case. So, but I think Ross, Lex, and Scott, the three of you have all made clear that's the case. And I'm going to propose that we just, that the resolution include a simple statement to that effect, is that that the bookings will be made directly by the visiting vessel through the harbor master's office in accordance with the rules and regulations then in effect, and be done with it. But that would be going to be my suggestion.
Great.
Any other comments?
Yep,
Duncan.
it's okay. It's going to be,
Ross.
I'm cool with the resolution. I'm cool with adding, the statement about the harbor master. Absolutely. My point is, this is kind of a half-baked situation here, and that AWSC and the city have to come together, and this is not our job, but they've got to come together to form a real relationship as opposed to this odd sort of disjointed thing that's going on. That's all. So I'm in favor of the resolution, and if you want to add this, totally good with that too.
All right, anybody else? Yes, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry, Alan, you had your hand in front of your face.
Oh, sorry. That's how I do it. Agree, but to an earlier point, I think Debbie made it. I would take the word "the" out of the resolution. So in the first paragraph, because I mean, unless I'm reading it wrong, it seems like they're the absolutely only ones that can coordinate with a tall ship, and everything is good. But to the earlier point, there's a lot of people out there doing work, and I just would hate that I could see that being a conflict in the future. I mean, other people want to do good work. When you use the word "the," that means other people are kind of emboldened to go through them. I could just see that. It's a small point, but I think it could mean something.
Where's the "the"? There's a lot of "these."
It's the, I'm sorry. It's in the very first paragraph, line, I'm reading it now.
As the second line, as opposed to as an ambassador.
As anything, but when you say "the," that means everybody else kind of has to go through them, or that means everybody else at least has to call them. From my research, they're doing great work. Just say yes and move on. But that one word to me means words mean things.
All right. And just so that I'm clear, so when we come back to this, in the second line of the resolution, after the first semicolon, it says, and designating the Annapolis Waterfront and Sailing Center as "the," and instead say as an.
Absolutely. I just think it's a small thing, but it could give freedom of maneuver in the future.
Okay.
Ooh.
Who would have thought that, Ross?
Harry.
Yes.
The purpose clause has no, first of all, the resolution, as has been pointed out, it is more than an attaboy, but it is in recognition that there has been a change in circumstances. In the past, the Sailing Center had a direct agreement with the state to negotiate the use of the long dock. That no longer exists. The long dock and the Burtis House are now city property under control of the city. So then what is the relationship? By resolution, the relationship is the three things down in the now therefore statements. And if you want, I can certainly consider doing an ordinance which would put something in code. I'm not sure what that would be, and I'm not sure I'm prepared to do that, especially not while we're in the middle of the budget. But I think this recognizes the change in the situation with the long dock. It recognizes the long relationship that the city has had with the sailing center, the value they bring, not only with their relationship with the various tall ships, but also with the various programs. I wish that Alderwoman Pendle Charles was here, or Alderman Gay, or even Archie Trader. There's a very strong relationship with this organization that is outside of tall ships that we would like to very much preserve. I hope the majority of us on the council, with the people that we'd like to introduce to STEM and to the water. So this resolution is, as I said before, a sense of the council recognizing the value of the sailing center and making clear what the relationship is with the city. Anything more than that, anything that becomes a legal relationship has to go into code. It has to become an ordinance and go into city code. I'm more than happy to consider that. I personally value all the things the sailing center has done over the years. I love seeing the tall ships down at the dock. I think it's millions of dollars of free advertising that we get when you walk down Main Street and see those pendants flying off the top of a mast. And I'd like to see that to continue. And I would certainly like to have the help of the sailing center to do that. I don't think there's anything that makes us exclusive. We have independent relationships, for example, with the Pride of Baltimore, as does now apparently the Eastport Yacht Club, unlike the Annapolis Yacht Club, I'm sorry to say, my club. But in any event, that's the intent here. The intent is to recognize a change in circumstances, to give a status for the sailing center that is recognition. It is not a legal status, comes with no legal powers or responsibilities. It says, we like what you've been doing. We are changing some of the rules, but we'd love you to stay around and help us bring those beautiful tall ships and to bring all of that important STEM program and all that introduction to the water for an amazing number of children who live in this city and never see the water, never go out on it. In fact, some cases are a little timorous about going out on the water. Zip.
So, Debbie.
I have to say this, I'm sorry, but the second resolution paragraph refers to the virtue of the organization's expertise and reputation and logistical management. And we have heard multiple times in this board that is not the case. There's just, there have been challenges. The reputation that it has for logistical management is not good. I know that the organization does a lot of very good things, but when we're talking about words, and I just have to bring that up because we have had a lot of challenges with the organization in that regard. I shouldn't say we, the city.
So Ross,
the harbor master's office.
The challenges, and we've discussed this, Debbie, correct me if I'm not articulating this more bluntly, correctly. The challenges have been exactly the question that I raised at the outset, has been the proclivity of the director to bypass city harbor master in dealing with that dock and now that the city owns, and that's one thing when the dock was under the under the ownership of the state and under an MOU. That's another thing when the dock is owned by the city and it is there to not just to benefit or for the scheduling purposes of one organization, but for the harbor master to schedule, to maintain the calendar and schedule. And that's all I'm trying to address. And it goes back to what Debbie was saying. We have heard on multiple
Agree
occasions
with what Debbie's saying more.
that there has been it's not that they don't have expertise in what they do in terms of selecting vessels, interacting with vessels. It's the interaction with the city harbor master's office that is the problem, has been a problem. And we just don't want to have that problem now that the city owns the dock. And that was the only purpose of my suggested amendment about that, is because I'm tired of hearing Beth's version, Lee Tawny's version, somebody else's version about conflicts at the Burtis dock or at city dock. I mean, it's just a recurring theme that I think we're all kind of tired of listening to. And Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you were getting at.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, is there any other comments? I think we have two suggestions, substantive suggestions. One is a grammatical, a thee to an and then the other is the suggestion. My suggestion is that that the resolution that make clear that any booking of the Burtis dock must be directly with the harbor master in accordance with rules and regulations then in effect.
I'm sorry. This is referring to Alan's thee to Ann. And the question goes to Ross. What was the intent of the city council's resolution here? Was their intent to make the waterfront center the focal point of people wanting to use that? If so, these stands. If not, it becomes Ann.
Well, first of all, let me be direct. This is my resolution. It's not the city council's yet.
There's your problem right there.
When it goes to the city council and garners 5 votes, it'll be the city council's resolution. So I'll just say one more time, the intent, the precipitous factor for the resolution is, as has been stated, there has been a tug of war about the use of the long dock. There was an official MOU relationship with the sailing center and the state. That no longer exists. So this resolution is to say, as it says in there, that we recognize the value that the sailing center has brought and we hope will continue to bring to the city along a number of fronts, STEM, relationships with tall ships, all of those sorts of things. I can tell you, and I was at a meeting with Brian Callahan representing the mayor. The mayor's office very definitely wants the value of the relationship of the sailing center in terms of bringing tall ships to the upringing and to continue to bring tall ships to the city. And this resolution recognizes them as one of the people that have been doing that, and we want to continue doing that. We have other relationships with tall ships. I cited the Pride of Baltimore. There is nothing in this resolution. If Brian Callahan and the mayor want to go out and attract some other ship and bring them in and get them properly registered through the harbor master, that they can't be on any city part of the city dock. So this does not indicate exclusivity. It indicates recognition that they are there, that they're valued, and they bring something to the table.
Okay, Ross. So basically you're saying you have no problem with changing the thee to Ann, right?
None at all.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Well, I will entertain a motion to do 2 things. One is to change the now infamous thee to Ann in the second line of the 4 paragraph. which I will then delineate more specifically, and to add a provision that addresses that bookings shall be direct through with the harbor master's office in accordance with rules and regulations then in effect. So is there a motion to make those two recommendations? Well,
Mighty quiet out there.
it's quiet out there.
Can you repeat the second one, Terry?
That all bookings shall be made directly with the and I'm sort of paraphrasing, but all bookings shall be made directly with the harbor master's office in accordance with rules and regulations then in effect.
I'm good with that.
All right, so is that a motion or just good with that?
My problem is that they were saying we're not giving them any power. You know, the changing of the "thee" to "and," it sounds silly, but it doesn't give them any power to be the representative.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
All right, second. Is there a second? We're gonna be here a while.
Come on, Mike.
I'm going to say something, Terry, about this whole thing. The resolution is just a resolution, but this relationship currently and after the resolution and before the resolution, it seems is a dysfunctional relationship because nothing's been created beyond that. There's no ordinance or there's no rules about how this is going to work. And you're trying to change the resolution to add some of that.
Yeah.
I think all I'm trying to do is confirm what Ross, Scott, and Lex have said is that the bookings of any vessel visiting, regardless of whether it comes through AWSC or otherwise, has to start with the application in accordance with the rules in effect with the harbor master's office. Plain and simple. Everybody plays on the same level playing field.
I'm seconding.
Other than that, I'm okay. I'm personally okay with the resolution because, as Ross said, this is a non-binding resolution. It's a pat on the back. It's creating. It's giving a blessing to a marketing organization, so to speak. And I don't have a particular problem with that. I just want to make absolutely clear that I don't keep hearing, or we don't keep hearing, issues about conflicts of bookings and things like that we've heard in the past. Plain and simple. But if there's no consensus on this resolution, we can simply say that the board took no action with respect to the resolution, and that's how it will go to the to council. But I think that's a bit of a shirk of our responsibility, particularly where Ross is okay with a than to an e to a thee to an and the bookings issue is one that's acknowledged by everybody on the by Ross and members of the board at AWSC. But again, I'm just one vote, and that's we can move on.
Hey, Terry, I'll give you a second just so we can get this off the table. I do agree. I do agree with Peter. It's a dysfunctional relationship that needs to be solved. And there you go. So I second this. I'm good.
Peter,
right.
Peter's on the board of the organization, aren't you, Peter?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Oh, I thought I saw your name on there. Sorry.
So is there any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor to do two things: change "thee" to "and," and to add a provision that the bookings, all bookings, shall be made directly with the harbor master's office in accordance with the rules and regulations then in effect. So with that, all in favor, raise your hand or do something. All right, we have surprisingly, for the lack of silence to get a motion, we have unanimous.
We're making sausage.
That's what legislation is.
All right, it is sausage.
Oh, God.
All right, Ross, that will be and I hope you will endorse that amendment about the bookings, because that, I think, will make very clear what everybody thinks is supposed to happen, and perhaps give some impetus to having it happen going forward.
I
All
will
right,
do that.
Ashley.
And I think this may now be on the agenda for Monday, and I will carry the message from the Maritime Advisory Board forward to the council on the vote.
And I'll get the, I'll have the legislative report in before that anyway. Yes, Rita.
Thank you.
So now do we vote on the resolution as a whole?
I guess I was I intended that the vote was for on the resolution with the amendments, but I guess you're right. We voted to make the amendments. Is there a motion now to adopt the resolution, to recommend the resolution? We don't adopt it. We recommend adoption of the resolution as amended. Duncan.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a second? Peter. Wait a minute. Peter, Alan had his hand up first, but he was down in the corner. So Alan is second. All in favor of recommending the resolution be adopted as amended?
Aye.
All right, we have, and Frida, you abstain or a negative?
Because of the track record of the bookings and the financial, I don't know what to call this, that they spend 70% of their charitable contributions on management and fundraising and 30% on actual programs. I cannot support this organization being appointed an ambassador for the city. They don't represent me. That's not what an ambassador does. So I vote no.
Okay, we have, I think, let me do my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Kimberly, 7 to 1. Scott, did you have something else?
No, I was counting
Okay.
votes there. That was my vote hand.
Okay. Ashley, I think that takes care of the 2 legislative issues. Ross, I think it's a record. I think there's more discussion on this resolution that's ever occurred on any resolution. But there's a history there that obviously.
There's a history there. That's right.
You bet.
Indeed. Terry, I want to thank you for letting me hang out. This has been fascinating to watch sausage made. I wish you all luck with the rest of your journey tonight.
Well, the rest of the journey tonight's pretty mundane. All right, Ashley, thank you very much. And let us now revisit the agenda, if I can find it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, the agenda.
The agenda, there is an agenda.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
have 2 sets of minutes. I sent copies around. We have the minutes from the February meeting and we have the minutes from the March meeting. So I'll start with the February minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended from the February?
Second.
Kimberly, I hope you got that. All in favor?
Yeah, baby.
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Next is the March, minutes as amended. Is there a motion to approve the March minutes?
I make a motion to approve the March minutes.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
As amended, yes.
Amended, yes. There was an amendment. We corrected them. And all in favor?
You bet.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that takes care of that. All right. Debbie or Peter, did you go to the MAIB or sit in on that?
Yeah. So it was a virtual meeting with the Anne Arundel County Maritime Advisory Board meeting, and it's led by Hamilton Cheney. And it's similar to our meeting. So just to give you kind of an overview, that was on March 28th. they spent most of their time talking about two things. One is the process of how public waterway funds are distributed across the state for dredging purposes, for dredging projects. So there's money from the DNR that flows to approve dredging projects, which seem to go from county to county, because there was talk about there's no funds that from the waterway funds, there's no funds from the Waterway Fund of Maryland that go to Annapolis, but there is funds that go to Anne Arundel County. So I don't fully understand how this all works, and some of you may, so chime right in, but they talked at length about how this Crisfield, there's a big facility owned by the state in Crisfield called Summers Cove, and there's a substantial amount of funds that are going to dredge that area and improve it for water access and such. They talked about this process being 2 to 4 years from the time of application to getting approval and getting funding for dredging projects. Does anybody have any more information about how that works?
So I believe dredging permits actually go up through the Board of Public Works. Governor, state comptroller, and maybe lieutenant governor. I can't remember who's on the Board of Public Works. Two of them. I know the governor, and the state comptroller are, but I believe that dredging projects, once they kind of meander through the application process, actually formally get approved by the Board of Public Works. And I think those dredging projects are even, I mean, that goes into, dredging of creeks. Individuals wants to dredge off their pier or whatever. They all, and they also have to go through the Corps of Engineers. So that's about
some of those projects get public funding,
right?
And many don't. Many don't because they're from a private organization. But many do get public funds through DNR and this public waterways funding, apparently.
But I think the city, it, like many aspects of the relationship with the county, is the county gets the city funding would come through the county. If the city needed to dredge Spa Creek or some area, that the funding would come through the county, through the waterway funds through the county.
Okay. Well, apparently there's about $15 million that work their way through approval, I believe. Something like that. But they spent a lot of time on that. And then they also talked about some new bill. They're talking about a bill that changes maritime zoning and the buffer zone, and debating the buffer zone between 25 feet and 100 feet. But they didn't go into a lot of detail there. But there's two areas that I thought were interesting that I would report back about.
All right. And Debbie, you're on the list for April, I think, but it's virtual.
Yeah, next week.
Yep. All right. Let me see. Hope, are you reporting for Stephen?
I am. Okay, so I know the question that always comes up is recovery zones. And we are currently transferring recovery zones to parklets. So the process for parklets on public streets is going before the City Council Rules and City Government Committee on May 6th. Currently, our process is open for public comment on our seasonal parklet website on the City of Annapolis website. And also for the parking lot, dining and parking lots, we are starting a pilot parking lot dining program. And we'll use data from the 60-day study to inform the city policy in regard to outdoor parking lots in the future. And I don't know if Alderman Arnett has anything additional to say about this program.
Just waiting for it to get to rules.
Yep, one step at a time, right?
So what are the metrics, or what is the data that is going to be studied for the parking lot in this pilot program?
We are meeting with a consultant tomorrow to go over those exact metrics and data points.
Okay. I assume the impact on parking in neighborhoods would be a thing of interest.
Yeah, that'll be one of them.
Yeah. Hey, Hope.
All right. Well, that'll be it. Now that spring is here, the diners are going to be happy. We'll see who else is happy, but the diners will be happy to be able to eat outside. Duncan?
A quick question. Hope, what is a parklet? What does
The
that mean?
parklets are the parking spaces that restaurants will be using on public streets. So
Oh.
you remember how they had them on Main Street? So a parklet is kind of what they would be renting a parking space.
Great, thank you.
And that I assume will include Market Square?
That's a different lease. That's a different issue. Market space is a different issue than our parklets. That's a whole different lease.
Is that going
Each
to
of the-
stay? Is that going to
each of the-
stay also?
It is, yes, because I think that's part of the transition toward the city dock plan. Debbie, do you know anything about that?
No. Hope the parklets, will they require leases as well?
They will, yes.
And sort of apropos that in that same regard, everybody may have seen in the paper or on the city's website, the physical demolition of Hillman Garage is slated to start, what, next week or week after? I mean, very shortly.
May
So,
5th.
May 5th. So come get your piece of history and take home a chunk of spalled concrete.
Ross, is the city still committed to not beginning city dock construction until Hillman Garage is open?
More or less. I mean, the city dock has to get planned. And so while the garage work is being done, the plans for exactly what city dock will look like will be developed. The kind of a pushment was because we're taking 105 spaces off of city dock. We didn't want to do that until there was more space in Hillman. So they're roughly tied to each other.
That was always a commitment through the whole committee process that it would not begin until Hillman was open so that the businesses have a chance to survive. It's going to be hard for the businesses no matter what. And I saw recently somewhere that it was 150 spaces that were going to be removed rather than 105. I was surprised. I don't know if that was a typo or what, but I was surprised that there were that many that were being removed.
Some of them may be at Donner Lot because their Donner Lot's no longer going to be a parking spot. So there's City Dock and then Donner as well. And I don't know, just throw that out there, I think.
The other thing that the city committed to was no net loss.
What's up, bro?
All right. Anything else on economic?
That's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Hope. And you can, unless you just are hell-bent to stay on, you free to go. The comprehensive plan. Duncan, any?
Yeah, I hate to say it every single time, but here it comes. Crickets.
Yes, Ross. I was going to ask you if you know anything about it since we're now
Well,
12 years on.
As you know, we're changing directors of planning and zoning. Michael LePace, who I personally am very impressed with, will be joining us in May. And I think that he will help shape that. I know that Eric is continuing to develop the plan. And I think the intent is to try to get something out this year. There's a lot of things that won't be crickets when they come out, like form-based zoning versus Euclidean zoning and development areas of the city. So there will be plenty of noise once something more formative gets put in place.
That's great to hear, Ross.
All the architects are going to have a field day changing their method of design.
We'll see.
All right, Debbie, any update on the NDZ?
We're still headed for July 1st as the implementation date for all recreational vessels. That's July 1st this year, and then July 1st, 2025 for commercial Coast Guard inspected passenger vessels.
Any update on, or actually, I guess I should ask Beth, is the Harbor Master's Office involved in the education aspect of this? And if so, in what fashion? Because I think the focus is going to be on education, not on enforcement.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So not yet.
Okay.
We're just waiting for, yeah, we will, but not yet.
So while I have you off mute, is there what's the progress on our Street in Park program?
So we're making really good progress. So we are doing a great improvement at Cheston. So we're doing like a full new bulkhead and a floating dock, and then we're doing we're working on 6th Street.
You said 6th?
Yeah.
Okay.
But nothing's happening very fast.
Oh,
And then we are also hoping to do more things at oh boy, West Street. West
Street? Nothing, there's nothing on West Street.
No.
You're thinking about Southgate?
No.
West Annapolis?
Yes.
The Tucker Street.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're working on that, but we haven't got any progress. So Cheston, 6th Street. That's where we're getting real progress. But it's taking so long.
Well, we're coming into summer, so hopefully we can something can get going in the summertime while we have some nice weather. Next item, second to last item. I thought Jake was going to be on. I think he got an invite, but to coordinate a harbor tour for the month of, probably the month of June. I will just, obviously May gets pretty full between uprigging and Blue Angels and everything else, but I think we were talking about a June date. Hopefully we'll have more information available before our next meeting, but that just needs to get coordinated. And last but not least, the annual election of chair and vice chair, and I haven't heard anybody jump up and down to relieve Scott or me yet. I see everybody's eyes are averted and looking down at their feet and twiddling their thumbs.
If you think it took a long time to pass the resolution,
I would hope we would have silence on this one too, but is there a motion to nominate a chair and vice chair?
I make a motion that we nominate Terry Lomax as chair and Scott Allen as vice chair of the Maritime Advisory Board.
Second.
down with it.
Scott, is there any discussion?
All right, the hunk that stays in power.
All right, all in favor?
All right.
All right. Last, most important thing, is there a motion to, well, first of all, is there any other business or discussion that anybody wants to raise? Alderman Arnett. Mute, unmute.
There's that microphone. I saw it in your February minutes. It came up at my town hall meeting about the dialogue that the advisory board had with the mayor on the e-mobility. And you gave him some fairly straight from the shoulder recommendations. And I wanted to let you know that in subsequent presentations of the e-mobility plan, particularly with regard to the e-ferry, he really did take to heart a lot of the things that this body recommended to him and changed his proposal. And I tell you that because I want you to know, first, you had value added, but also the mayor does listen. And he did respond to a lot of the things that you said.
Thank you. It
Ross.
makes me, I suspect everyone else, feel like what we do once a month has some contributive value. So that's good to know. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Oh, Debbie had her hand up first. Oh, go ahead.
Just shameless promotion. There's a big maritime event this weekend at Bay Bridge Marina. So the power boats will be at Bay Bridge Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then next weekend will be the Annapolis Spring Sailboat Show, City Dock, next weekend.
At City Dock.
City Dock, Spring
Okay.
Sailboat Show. Don't miss that.
All right. Debbie?
Did we talk about 4E? I missed that. The Burtis House long dock policy. And you had said that you were attaching those documents and I didn't get those.
I will send them. I think the policy was what Ross was talking about, had just gone through Rules Committee. I thought the changes were incorporated, but I will make sure I resend them. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were attached.
They weren't attached.
There were what it was. Well, I'll just resend it. There was the for-profit application, the not-for-profit application / nonprofit application, the summary from a meeting, and then there was a summary of of other comments. I think there were 4 documents that were involved, but I will send out those. They were, that 4E was sort of subsumed in our lengthier discussion about R1722, which is why I kind of skipped over it because it was, but I will resend those comments.
Will we have an opportunity to talk about them with input before they get voted on?
Well, they don't get, as Ross said,
They don't get voted on.
There's no vote. It's just basically coordinating with Beth at that point.
Okay. Because we had said last time that we were going to review that this time, and
I just assumed that everybody had gotten those. Let me look back at one quick thing. March. Permit, Burtis House, electric mobility, NDC application.
we really can't discuss them tonight because they weren't attached. So,
Well, we can
Would we
discuss
have
them because it's on the agenda, but it's a moot discussion if nobody got them.
right.
So there was the package was a input from stakeholders on March 15th. Then there was some minutes, the reservation and 2 reservation applications. So I'll just go back to and resend those, and then we'll just take them up. And if there's any, I don't think there was any. So Beth, let me ask you this. I'm just looking back at my scribbled notes. Is there a provision that there is a dockage fee if the vessel is selling tickets for passage?
I mean, it isn't enumerated like that. It isn't said like that.
I'm sorry, I didn't, you were breaking up.
It is not said like that.
Well, is
Right.
it said in some other fashion?
It just says if you're a nonprofit, I believe, because Beth sent me the nonprofit one late this afternoon. It says if you're a nonprofit, you don't have to pay. It doesn't reflect whether or not you're charging or selling tickets. It just says you don't have to pay.
I mean, no one has said that, but I would think that would be a tweak that one would like to put.
Yep.
That was garbled.
That isn't what was said. But one would like to think that many groups would like to say we should do that.
That we should.
We should charge if they are selling tickets.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
That
Okay.
makes sense to me.
But that is not in the current provision.
All right, Debbie, let me send this out for starters, and then we may revisit this either online or otherwise before our next meeting. But let me, at this point, if you don't have it, then I need to send it around with the comments. So I will send that out in the morning. All right, anybody else? It is, well, we still beat the bell at Buxton. They don't ring the bell until not 8:45, so we beat that still. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Thomasini, you're right on that. Mr. Trogdon, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody have a good evening. It's a little